Hi everybody, Joe Cioffi here. Friday night, week's over with. Yippee! It's been a long week. We've got a lot going on, both in the short and in the long range. If the medium range is going to be defined by Monday through Friday of next week, Thanksgiving week, that looks pretty quiet. So at least that time frame is going to be on the quiet side. But we've got issues for this weekend. Who says I'm a trophy fisherman? Oh, Justin Hawkinsmith. Good evening to you, sir. Adam Fitz, Pugmaster, and Daniello. Okay, so let me get started here because there's a lot going on in the atmosphere with all this blocking that's starting to develop now. You know, for all the talk that we've been doing for the last week plus on this blocking pattern, it really only gets underway now. And starts to build, and it will continue to build and affect the weather across North America for all of next week and next weekend. So up until now, the block hasn't really gotten started yet, but we are seeing that beginning to build, and it's going to take us to some very interesting places, I think, forecast-wise, in the long haul. So let's look at what's going on at the moment, and we're taking a look at the GFS model with low pressure in Kansas. We were getting some snows today and into this evening across parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Some places the snow's been coming down at a pretty good clip. We also have some rain with a little bit of snow up in the upper Midwest. This is the low that's going to get wrapped up into a big storm during Saturday. Now you can see this sort of expanding area of showers. There's a cold front that runs from northwest Ohio Saturday afternoon around 1 p.m. Northwest Ohio down into northeastern Texas. There's a cold high behind it. There's even a little bit of snow being indicated with rain changing to snow over parts of eastern Iowa and southern Wisconsin. Now, that low is going to move into the northeast Saturday night into Sunday. The leading showers will probably not come in until later Saturday afternoon. So if you're in my area of the northeast from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, you might have it dry at least into the early to middle part of the day Saturday before you start to deal with some showers. And we've got a warm front, cold front combination to deal with here as the low intensifies. Some snow coming out of this. Might change over to snow before it ends across parts of Michigan and maybe even into parts of Ohio, although I think on the southern end of this it may not be anything more than just some flurries at the end. Looks like some snow just northeast of Lake Huron of a little bit more of a significant nature there. That low moves up into upstate New York, right on the Canadian border. By Sunday morning, the trailing cold front right along the coast. Models have been a little slower with every run and bringing the front through. It looked like yesterday it would come through more around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Now it looks like 7 a.m. When it reaches the coastline. And of course, there'll be some rain and wind through all of New England, and windy behind it. The rain starts to change over to snow in the colder air behind it across western Pennsylvania, down into West Virginia, and in through western New York. We'll get a little bit of lake effect action there during the day on Sunday in western New York and northwestern PA and into northeastern Ohio. Rain continues into New England before eventually changes over to snow before ending as we head into Maine. Meanwhile, back up in the Pacific Northwest, let me just back it up a bit. We've got another system that's dropping southeastward off from Canada that's bringing heavy rain and snow into the northwestern corner there of Washington State and into southwestern Canada. The bulk of the energy with this is going to take its time getting in there, but gradually that rain area moves southeastward and shrinks a bit as we move into Monday night and into Tuesday. Across the rest of the country, it looks pretty quiet, except as we move into Wednesday, we start to see more action in the northwest and also some showers down in through Florida. There's going to be lower pressures in the Gulf of Mexico, nothing tropical here, but we are going to see some shower activity and some rain in perhaps as we get into Thanksgiving Day over much of the state of Florida, and also in the Pacific Northwest. With a big ridge building out in the west over time, the cold air disappears for a bit, so it's going to be mostly rain in the Pacific Northwest. So you can see on Thanksgiving Day in the afternoon, we've got showers from the coastal Carolinas on the GFS. Now, I'm going to caution you. I'm thinking that this might be overdone and a bit too fast. There's disagreement with the weather models in terms of timing. I think the GFS may be rushing it a little bit here. But on the whole, the weather across the United States this Thanksgiving week is going to be on the tranquil side. That, to me, is a given. No major storms, really, just minor inconveniences once we get through to Saturday and Sunday with that intensifying low in the Northeast. Now, I'm going to, I want to jump back one run to look at the upper air. I don't want to really look at the new run, only because of the fact that I haven't really had time to examine it. And I did give it a very quick glance before we started tonight, but for the most part, it really just kind of shows the possibilities that I'm going to explain to you here going beyond next Friday. Now, look up in the area around Greenland by late next week. You've got this big upper high, and I'm going to back off 6 hours because this way I can compare it head to head to the European. We've got this big upper high building over near Greenland. And then extends down into northern Canada. So you can see that the mean jet stream is, as we said with these blocks, they displace the jet further south. So you're seeing the jet stream coming in out of the Pacific. You've got this ridge, this upper high sitting off of Baja California. So you have generally a warm ridge in the west, and you have a cold trough in the eastern part of the United States. Now, as we compared to the European, one of the things that struck me was the fact that for the first time in the last week plus that we've been looking at the model runs with regards to this block, one of the things that we've been dealing with is that the models have been kind of having a really tough time. Each model has kind of had a different perspective in terms of the strength of the block, the position of the block, and so on. But when we look at the last couple of runs, but particularly the last run, they seem to be coming into closer agreement. And I think that's encouraging from certainly a forecast confidence standpoint. When we look at the GFS, this is for Friday morning, and we're looking at the European, they actually are very similar in the strength of the block. And I think that is important because this is going to give me a little more confidence in what the models might be suggesting down the road. The longer the blocking pattern stays, I think it's very safe to say that the longer the block stays, the more dangerous the pattern becomes with regards to the possibility of storm development. And that kind of makes sense. I mean, if you've got a pattern that can be favorable for East Coast storms, the longer it hangs around, the odds that something might happen start to increase over time. So this is something we're going to pay attention to, that strength of that block and the position of the block, and the fact that the models are in fair agreement is lending some confidence in this. Now, with respect to the European and to a lesser degree the GFS, but what happens is that the block, the way it's oriented, you've got a ridge that builds up the west. You have a stretching upper low. Part of it is east of Newfoundland, and then an arm rotates back down and around. It has to do that because the block is preventing this from this system from pulling out completely. So the result is that another deep trough, at least on the European, and to some extent the GFS has this too, digs down and around, and the European at least implied the possibility that there could be some kind of coastal development next weekend. The GFS's difference in this is one of timing, and it has different pieces of this puzzle that the European keys on, which the GFS does not. And as a result, what the GFS does with this, and it's a possibility that this will happen, you get the same idea. The block, the stretching of the upper lows, there's this southern system here that comes out of the Gulf that the European keys on and gets involved in all this, and the GFS, because it's faster, keeps it a completely separate entity. And as a result, it's all with the northern part of the jet stream that drops southward. In both cases, the result will be below average temperatures, and in some cases much below average temperatures, beginning perhaps next Sunday and lasting in the east through the first days of December. I'm just rolling through the GFS as we go out into the longer term on the GFS run, and you know, it looks fairly cold until you get late in the period, but again, this is the off-cycle, you know, now we're back, I'm looking at the off-cycle run, it tends to get a bit squirrely, but both models are certainly suggesting some possibilities next weekend. Now, you know, this is kind of like an early speculation here at this point. I'm not, you know, the only confidence I have is the fact that the models seem to be, you know, that showing of agreement, but inside that agreement there are some disagreements, and we're going to work those out, or attempt to work those out over time. Now, with respect to snowfall over the next 10 days, just to give you an idea, there is some that occurs up through upstate New York and New England and in the northern Rockies, and some light amounts up through the northern plains and upper Midwest. But the main action seems to be in southeastern Canada because of this deep low that's going by for Saturday into Sunday. And then, of course, you've got that cold trough that we're going to be seeing pretty much through next week and beyond. And with the standpoint of rainfall, by the way, I'm going to throw the rain map up. Again, over the next 10 days, a lot in the west, and particularly the northwest, it gets exceptionally heavy with those orangey yellow colors. You know, you're talking about 9-10 inches plus in total rainfall over 10 days, but some of that heavy rain extends down into northern California. You can see in the east amounts generally on the order of a ½ an inch to an inch or two in some isolated spots. Most of this is front end loaded. That meaning that it's going to be coming this weekend, and of course not much this week, the next week coming up, because the weather is so tranquil. Florida's rain that's indicated on the order of anywhere from a ½ an inch to a couple of inches, that is for the Wednesday, Thursday time frame and beyond. So it looks, you know, the week we're pretty certain is going to be quiet and calm after we get through the weekend, and then we're going to watch for the possibilities for next week. I'm going to pull up, I've got two graphics that I did that I was able to draw on, so you can kind of see how this should work in terms of what's happening with the jet stream. There's your blocking high to the north. You see the strong jet that comes from out of Canada across the northeast. You have an upper low that's sitting over near Newfoundland, Labrador, southeastern Labrador, and that strong jet. There's an energy that's coming down from Lake Winnipeg into the western Great Lakes, and that jet goes all the way down into Florida, ridge up in the west. That is the GFS's view. And when I pull up the European, and this is all, by the way, this is for this was for next Saturday now, so we're a little over 7.5 days away. We'll see how accurate the model is when we get there. Here's the European for the same time frame. Similar, but there are some notable differences in terms of the timing. The European is faster with that jet dropping down out of Canada. The GFS is slower. It has energy already dropping into the western lakes. If this is the case, if the European's timing is more correct, it's the reason. It is definitely the reason why the European is able to pick up this energy that moves from Florida and off the southeast coast, and then gets it involved with some kind of development over along the southern New England coast on Sunday. Whether that is correct, you know, whether that timing issue is correct or not, remains to be seen. So, you know, a lot of variables here, obviously, and we're still, you know, we've got a lot of time. But today's runs were really the first, you know, yesterday I kind of started seeing some hints of it, but I really didn't feel too confident about talking about it until, you know, I wanted to see at least, you know, one run get a hold of this and do something with it. And today's dayside runs did exactly that. So at least from that standpoint, we've got something to look at. Bear in mind that the range of possibilities here are large, including one which would just make this a simple cold front and gradually just turning colder next weekend and beyond. I think with either model, you're going to get that outcome. That's a very, very cold pattern that is setting up with the block like that. Whether there's a storm that comes with it is going to depend on how much room we get in the atmosphere and how all these individual pieces time themselves out. So let's roll back. I'm seeing your comments now, and we're going to say hi to everyone, including Seth, Albadin, Delvin is here, James NASCAR, Scott Olson, Chris Alley is here, Karen Steed. Chris, I hope you're feeling better. Anne Marie Passaretti, Dio, Daniello, Corey Bodziak, Raymond is here. Watch for some thunderstorms tomorrow, Raymond, and wind advisories on Sunday. Justin Hawkins Smith, who says, I'm noticing from the earlier December NOAA and European models that the blocking high may move south and sit over lower Canada. If that happens, will that cut off all the cold air and snow potential? It would depend. It's not just the blocking high, it's everything else that's going on around it. So it would really depend on all the factors. Is there an upper low that's in, off the coast of New England or in southeastern Canada, while to the east of the upper high? That might make it cold at low levels. It may make it colder than average just in New England and in the Northeast down to the Mid-Atlantic states, and then average or above average as you go west. So a lot depends on how it orients itself, and I would just not really go too crazy about what the long range models are doing on any of the models at all, if only because of the fact that one of the things about blocking is these blocking patterns is they're highly unstable. They can sometimes break down in a heartbeat. Other times they can last a lot longer than you think, and also the possibility that you could just see some sort of a flex where the block weakens, but there's still some semblance of it there, and then it comes back after taking a bit of a break. So I don't think we're going to be able to evaluate that part of the equation at the moment. I think we're going to be, the blocking that is happening is going to take us at least through next weekend and beyond. After that, it becomes a dicey proposition in terms of a forecast. But leaving it there for a couple of weeks, I can't see why not. After that, we'll let nature take its course. Good to hear you're a little better, and yes, happy Thanksgiving to you. By the way, I don't expect too much with respect to the lake effect on Sunday. There'll be some local areas that might get their first solid snowfall, but in terms of a widespread lake effect event, I'm not seeing it. Don't want to leave out Adam Fitz, by the way, and Pugmaster. Hi to you guys as well. So you know what? Let's keep it short on this Friday night. It's Friday night, going into a weekend. So let's enjoy ourselves with regards to the weather going forward. We'll be on weekend schedule this, of course, and that'll mean that we'll be able to do some live streams at different times, and I'll be able to do a little bit of weather video where I can get a little bit more analysis done. So make sure you check that out over the weekend. In the description of the video, by the way, I did put up my Facebook page and the link to my Facebook page and to my website. So you can access it straight from here, or if you go to recheck the video later on, just read in the description area. You should be able to link to my Facebook and website a bit easier than just trying to do it on memory. And if you do go to my Facebook page, be sure to like it, and this way you'll get all the posts as they come in. Trying to think if there's anything else going on at the moment. And the answer to that is no. It's like as I said, it's the end of the week, and it's time to take a breather. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we will also see you on Sunday. Next week's Thanksgiving, so I hope everybody's getting their preps underway. I've got my preps underway. We're going to keep the weather nice and calm so that everybody can get to wherever it is they have to go, or maybe they're coming to you either way, weather should have minimal impact next week, except in those few places that we talked about earlier. All right, folks, take care. We will see you tomorrow.